You've been told that empires rise through armies, territory, and political power. But what if the greatest empire in human history isn't defined by borders? Not enforced by soldiers, not visible on any map? What if it's built on interest, enforced through inflation, and funded by invisible taxes that you pay without knowing it? You can't vote for its leaders, you can't see its laws. And yet, it shapes your salary, your savings, your debt, your future every single day. Today, we expose the silent empire that governs modern life, and the hidden machinery that keeps it alive. To understand this empire, we must step back into a time when money was not an abstraction, when it was metal, scarce, and physical. For thousands of years, gold and silver controlled commerce. The rules were simple: whoever held the metal held the power. Kings could raise armies, but they could not print gold. They could mint coins, but they couldn't create value out of thin air. Then came the breakthrough, or the betrayal, depending on how you see it. Early bankers realized something extraordinary. People rarely withdrew their gold at the same time, so banks began issuing receipts, the ancestors of modern banknotes, promising to return gold upon request. But here's the twist that changed everything: banks issued more receipts than gold they actually held. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking, the machinery that would evolve into interest, inflation, and eventually invisible taxation. A system where money was no longer wealth, it was debt. And that single shift from wealth to debt marks the birth of today's silent empire. Interest began as a fee for lending risk. If a merchant lent gold across the sea, they needed compensation for danger and time. Reasonable enough. But once money became receipts, promises, interest transformed into something far more powerful. Banks realized they could create new money by issuing loans. And every loan generated interest flowing back to the bank. Money creation became a business, debt became a product, and interest became the quiet engine of profit. This was the first foundation of the empire. Interest meant that every dollar in circulation had a cost attached to it, a cost paid by workers, companies, and governments. But interest alone wasn't enough to build an empire. Banks needed another tool, a tool that could extract value not once, but continuously, a tool that didn't require permission. That tool was inflation. Inflation is one of the most misunderstood forces in modern life. People think inflation is simple: prices rise over time, but inflation is not natural. It is not random, it is not an accident. Inflation is policy, a deliberate feature of the system. Once money stopped being tied to gold and became purely a ledger entry, governments gained an extraordinary power: the ability to create money without limit. But printing money has consequences. More money chasing the same goods increases prices. Your money buys less, your savings quietly drain. Your future becomes more expensive. Inflation is often described as an economic indicator, but make no mistake, it is a form of taxation. You don't see it on your paycheck. You don't get a bill in the mail, but every dollar you hold becomes worth slightly less each year. And here is the twist most people never see: inflation helps debtors and punishes savers. And the biggest debtor in the world is the government. Through inflation, governments repay loans in dollars worth less than the dollars they borrowed, a silent transfer of wealth from citizens to the state. Interest extracts wealth from borrowers, inflation extracts wealth from savers. But the empire is not complete until these two forces combine into something even more powerful. Most people think taxes are collected through income tax, sales tax, property tax, but those are only the visible taxes. The most powerful taxes are invisible, built into the structure of the monetary system itself. Here are the three invisible taxes the empire uses daily. 1. The inflation tax. Every year, the dollars you hold buy less. This is a tax on holding money. 2. The debt tax. Since all money is created through debt, your work goes toward servicing a system that must maintain perpetual borrowing. 3. The interest tax. The cost of interest built into mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and corporate borrowing gets passed to consumers through prices, rents, and fees. Together, these taxes are unavoidable. You cannot escape them. You pay them whether you earn more or earn less, whether you spend money or save it. These invisible taxes are the backbone of the silent empire, a system that grows stronger the more you participate. This is where the system reaches its breaking point. It requires constant growth, constant borrowing, and constant inflation to stay alive. But what happens when growth slows, when borrowing stops, when inflation becomes unbearable? The answer is simple: the system bends, but it never breaks, because the empire has mastered another weapon. In every major crisis, the pattern repeats. 2008, real estate collapses, banks fail, and millions lose their homes. Solution: governments create trillions in new money to stabilize the system. Debt increases, inflation rises, the invisible taxes continue. 2020, a global pandemic shuts down economies. Solution: central banks print more money in a single year than in the previous decade. Debt explodes, inflation surges, invisible taxes accelerate. 2023 to 2024, governments face record deficits, interest payments skyrocketing, and social unrest. Solution: more borrowing, more money creation, more inflation. It doesn't matter what the crisis is: financial, political, health-related, geopolitical. The response is always the same: print, borrow, inflate. The silent empire absorbs shocks by transferring the cost to citizens, not institutions. Debt grows, savings shrink, hard work becomes less valuable, and the system continues. But what about reforms? What about attempts to fix inflation, control interest, or reduce debt? They fail, and not by accident. The empire is designed to protect itself. Attempts to fix the system always fall into one of three categories: austerity, cut spending; raise taxes, shrink deficits. But this slows economic growth, destabilizing the debt machine. So politicians avoid real austerity. Monetary tightening, raise interest rates to reduce inflation. This risks recession and increases government borrowing costs, so tightening is temporary. Debt reduction: spend less than you earn and pay down the debt. But modern economies depend on growth, and growth depends on borrowing. Reducing debt shrinks the money supply itself, forcing collapse. Every proposed fix threatens the empire's foundations. So the empire rejects them. This is not a broken system. It is a self-preserving system, which brings us to today, where the silent empire is stronger than ever. You don't have to look far to see the empire at work. Record debt levels: global debt exceeds $320 trillion. U.S. national debt surpasses $35 trillion. Most countries cannot repay their debt, only refinance it. Interest as a global revenue stream: governments spend more on interest payments than on defense or education. Inflation as policy: central banks target 2% inflation on purpose. This means your savings are designed to lose value every year. Invisible taxes are now default. Housing prices have tripled in many countries within a generation. Wage growth lags far behind inflation. Everyday goods shrink in size but not in price. Shrinkflation: the empire grows not through conquest, but through compounding obligations. The more inflation rises, the more debt expands, the more interest is paid. The stronger the empire becomes, and the weaker your purchasing power becomes. This is the hidden story behind the modern economy, a system built not on resources, productivity, or innovation, but on the silent extraction of wealth through interest, inflation, and invisible taxes. Takeaway number 1. You don't live in a monetary system, you live in a debt system. Money is issued as debt. Your access to money depends on borrowing. And your future depends on a system that grows through obligations. Takeaway number 2. Inflation is not an accident, it is the empire's lifeblood. Your savings are designed to lose value. Your wages struggle to keep up. And the system relies on this to survive. Takeaway number 3. Invisible taxes are the most powerful form of control. You can avoid income tax. You can avoid sales tax. But you cannot escape inflation, interest, or the debt-based architecture of modern money. If the greatest empire in history is built on interest, inflation, and invisible taxation, what happens when people finally understand how it works? Every empire in history has fallen, not because of outside enemies, but because the people stopped believing in its foundations. And the foundation of today's empire is belief. Belief in money. Belief in debt. Belief in the system. The real question is not whether the empire will fall, but whether the people will recognize it before it's too late. If you want to keep peeling back the layers to uncover the financial systems that shape your life, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video with someone who still believes inflation is natural, The silent empire thrives in darkness. It's time to turn the lights on.